3, 2, 1, go. Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to another tutorial with Nomad Sculpt. So I want to make this popsicle. I don't know why I've been wanting to make a popsicle kind of melting for a while. So first things first, make sure you check out my tutorial on how to make a rounded edge tool because we're going to be using that in this tutorial. Alright, so the first thing we'll make is the popsicle, and for that we'll just use a box. So I do have my little quick backdrop here, which is just two planes. It's always nice to have a backdrop. So let's bring the box up, and I'll take a look at the top view. We'll stretch it out a little bit. So maybe something like this is good. I'll shrink it a bit. So essentially you just want to get the basic width of the popsicle. So now you can validate it. I'm just going to tap top, so we're looking at the very top. So the next thing we want to do is sort of make it a little bit on an angle. So we want to carve a line on both sides from here to here. So for that, I just use trim. And we can use the line tool. So we're using trim and line, and we want to turn on symmetry because this is our symmetry line, and that's turned on right here. So I want to use the symmetry because I want anything I do on this side to happen on this side. So we have symmetry on, we're using the line. I'm going to start right at the edge, and I'm just going to kind of drag it where I want it to go. Now, I actually didn't put it in the right spot because now it's doing that. So I want to put it maybe over a little bit more, just so we can have that little bit of an angle. So more like this. I think that looks pretty good. So now we'll do the stem. So let's go ahead and let me bring this up so I don't get it confused. I'm just going to rename this Popsicle. So now I want to add the stem, so I'm going to use a cylinder. So let's bring the cylinder up. And we can shrink it. And obviously we can resize it like this. And I'm actually going to put it on the bottom. This way I can get the proper width. Maybe a little bit smaller. So maybe something like that. And I don't mind that it's pretty thick. You know, it's a 3D. I like to make my 3D stuff kind of fat. So I think this is pretty good. And now we can stretch this to make it look like a popsicle stick, but we don't want to just stretch it normally like this because then it kind of gets out of shape. So what you can do is validate it, then turn on symmetry, and then you want to make sure that you're on the correct symmetry to stretch it, which right now I think is the wrong way. That's this way. And this is because of this symmetry line, the default symmetry line. So instead, we can change it to Z, the Z axis. So now that we're on the Z axis, you should be able to, oh, something's wrong. Something's off there. Oh, I must have moved it somehow. I must have moved it off the center line somehow. But now you can see that the blue line is in the middle. So the blue line is in the middle. And now you can stretch it the correct way. Oop, there we go. All right, that's a little long, so I'm going to just shorten it up. And if I want to just move it up, I just take it off of symmetry and then you can move it up. So maybe something like this is a little bit better. Maybe a tad bit smaller. So then you have something like that. Okay, so obviously the edges are going to be more round. So this is where a rounded edge comes into play. But yeah, we can round the edge a little bit now. So we take rounded edge tool, and let me make sure my settings are right, because once you restart Nomad, the settings will reset. So as long as your settings are right, then you can go ahead and round this out, and you see the edges are becoming nice and round. You can also go to the voxel remesh, and you can actually voxel remesh it at a lower number. So let's say we did like 30, 34 or so. You remesh it and it gets really, really soft. So then you can go in here and you can really round it out, depending on how round you want it. So I don't really want mine that round. I think I probably like it like this. I think that looks pretty good. And I'm actually going to turn this light down a little bit because it's very bright on this side. So I might turn it up a little bit later when we start doing the lighting. And here's another little trick. I like to have the top, I don't want the top a little bit more rounded. So I'm going to use this symmetry, but I want whatever I do on the top half to happen on the bottom half as well. So this means I need to engage the X and the Y, because you see the green line here, the Y is the top and the bottom. So now you can just take smooth, and I'm just going to lightly smooth on the corners. If I want to make the top a little more, if I want to make the top a little more rounded, like that. So I'm just going to turn this off because I don't need it anymore, and I might forget that it's on. So now we can make those two little impressions that are usually in Popsicles. So to do that, we'll just add, let's rename this to Pop Stick. So now we're going to add another cylinder, and we're going to use this to make a Boolean operation. I actually have another video about this that I made recently. So we brought the cylinder up, but we need to turn it. So let's go to Snap and keep it on 90, or put it on 90. That way it will just turn 90 degrees. And so now we can shrink it to about the size that we want those impressions to be. Maybe a little bit smaller, something like this. And now I'll tap mirror up here. And now we have two of them, maybe a little bit smaller. So I'm just going to stretch these out so they're about as long as I want. Bring them up. And I actually don't know if, yeah, maybe we'll do it like this time. So they're about where I want, but they're not actually straight. Like they would be sort of on a little bit of an angle. So since they're mirrored, we can just take this green ring and then we can just slightly adjust it. Got to turn it, we got to take off Snap. So we can slightly adjust it so that they're on an angle. So maybe something like that. And also just, I think it defaults to orthographic. I don't usually do my modeling in perspective. It's usually orthographic. So hopefully I made note of that in the beginning. I can't remember. So now we have our two cylinders, and I'm just going to flatten them like this. And then I'm going to drag them down so that they're on the surface. And we probably don't need them that deep, so maybe about that much. And we can use these to carve out this shape into our popsicle. So let me just hide the background so I can have a good look. So I'm going to validate these two cylinders because I think they look how I want them to look. So we want this to also be on the opposite side, the same cutouts. So we'll just clone the mirror. Let's do pivot, reset, pivot, because I don't know why the pivot moves around crazy all the time. We'll just move this to the other side and kind of just match it like this. Doesn't have to be perfect. I think that's pretty good. So now we'll just select all of these and the popsicle, not the popsicle stick. We don't need that. And I'm going to turn these off. And then we're going to voxel remesh probably around 200. Or voxel merge. So then we have these nice cutouts. And you can make them deeper or more shallow. But we're going to now use our rounded edge brush. So you'll see that it will sort of shallow them out as we use our magic tool. I think it looks great. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. And the stick I think looks pretty good. I'm going to use the rounded brush on the stick as well. Maybe twice. And you can actually decimate once, maybe twice. I'll do it once. So that looks pretty good. And for the popsicle, which is now 73.1K, that's a lot. So you can decimate this as well. I'm not going to decimate too much because I want it to look nice and pretty. We're not really going to use this for much else, but you could decimate more if you wanted to. So now let's just turn it on its side and make sure everything is lined up. We don't want this popsicle stick looking crazy. So now it's in the middle. Okay, so I think we're pretty good with this part of it. So I'm just going to bring back the floor, the back wall and the floor. And let's see where we're at. And before I turn one of these lights down, I think it was this one. I'll turn it up a little bit now. So now we have our popsicle. It's looking pretty good. So let's grab everything. First, I'm just going to connect these. So we'll grab our popsicle and we'll turn it upside down. And you can actually use the snap tool if you want to make it perfectly upside down. We'll bring it up a little bit. Or I guess maybe not up a little bit. Man, maybe we'll leave it there. So I think it looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and color it a nice bright red. We'll turn the roughness down. Actually, this one we can put the roughness around. I'm not going to make it too rough. And I'll just add we'll just paint in some glossiness. So it's really glossy where it's melted, but not very, very glossy where it's still a popsicle. This we can just color like a light beige. I think that works for this. And now we'll just add a cylinder. We don't want to have it inside. I guess it's okay if it's inside actually. So we'll add a cylinder and let's just we'll just rename it Puddle. And we'll bring it up, flatten it. We can make it bigger. However big you want your puddle to be. So maybe something like this. I'll flatten it a little bit more. So I think something like that works. I'll add another cylinder. And we'll just call it P. So little tiny puddles. And now we'll just make spheres. So just make some spheres and you can sort of move them around the edge. So kind of like this. You can just tap clone. And you can sort of maybe stretch some. Oh, let's get it off snap so we can move it how we like it. I'll clone this one. So then you just sort of add these, but you don't want to really put them in like the same spots. So you just want to kind of vary them and vary the sizes as well. But you just want to make sure that they're kind of going into the ground. People blending just out of nowhere. It's like, it's hard out here. This tutorial life is hard. Okay, I think this is pretty good. And it is kind of addicting, so try not to go overboard on the drips, but I know it's kind of difficult. Even with me, it's like even as I'm telling you that, it's like I just want to make more drips and more drips. I want to see what one looks like if we just add a sphere. That is, I guess they would all be touching, right? I guess they would all be touching. All right, I think that looks good. So they're just kind of flat spheres, and you just want to vary them so there's some nice variation. So now we'll just match the colors. So sometimes I do things really, really fast. So essentially, I'm just going to tap this colored circle here with a line through it. I'll tap the eyedropper. And now I can tap here and you see that it takes whatever color I'm on. So you want to grab that red color. And then let's bring together all of our little puddles, all these guys. So we can just select these all and we can join them. And let's do a voxel remesh. I think 200 is fine. Maybe we'll do like 250. So now they're all remeshed together. So now that all these are joined together, we want to trim this extra bit at the bottom. So we want to make this nice and flat. So now that they're together, let's press front. And it's a little hard to see where the line is, so you might have to kind of offset it a little bit, but you just want to trim. Whoops. Let's use the rectangle. So something like this. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So now that that's trimmed, we can go ahead and use the rounded edge. And we can just give it a few swipes to really join them together. And we can color it as well. So we'll just color it the same color, and let's scale back the roughness so that it's nice and glossy. But not only do we want to do that, let's hit paint all. You can also go in here in the materials and the reflectance. You can raise this up higher. And if you're wondering why I have these nice round pops, so this is caused by the environment. So when we go in the lighting tab, you see my environment here. When I turn those off, those pretty much go away. And the only pops are from the actual lights. And this environment is available on my Gumroad, so just check the description. I have the link to it. I made this in Procreate, and I use this for pretty much all my sculpts. So as you can see, the environment really makes a difference. But of course, you can tap it. You have all these other environments that can look interesting or not interesting. Personally, I always use mine. So the next thing I want to do is change these to subsurface, because this will allow the light to go through our meshes. So we're going to tap here, subsurface, but this is way too translucent. So I guess you could do that, but I never use that one. I'm not really sure with this translucency. I never really use it. I just scale this down to like 1. So that's usually where I keep it. And this, let's see, sometimes I leave this one because it looks nice, but let's see how it looks when we do subsurface as well. Let's scale this down. I normally think that things look better when they are subsurface. They just look way more realistic. So this looks pretty good for now, but I do want to add some details first to our popsicle. So our color is still, we have the roughness is all the way down. So that's what we want, because we just want to paint some of this glossiness on the popsicle. Firstly, on the bottom, near where it is melting. So I'm just painting this on there so that the bottom of the popsicle is nice and melty and has like a nice shine to it. And you can use your smooth brush and turn the intensity all the way down. I have it cloned, so the intensity is always down on here. And I'm just going to kind of blend that in a little bit. And all this, again, all this is the smooth brush with 0 intensity. So I'm going to go back to the paintbrush. I'm going to lower the intensity a little bit. And I just want to paint on some of this glossy paint on the edges. Maybe a little bit down the side. So maybe just like a little bit up here. And I'll use the same smooth brush with 0 intensity just to sort of even it out. So this way it's a little bit melty, but not completely melty. And the other few things I wanted to do is add some little touches of detail. So for the popsicle, I'm going to use inflate. So I'm going to use inflate on the popsicle and make sure I'm on the glossy color. And you can actually take it off of symmetry. Let's make it a little bit bigger. I'm just going to smooth this out too. Just so there's a little bit of since it's melting, we want it to be a little bit off on the bottom, a little bit deformed on the bottom. And you can do the same thing with this part. You can use inflate. Oops, let's turn symmetry off. Oops, I'm supposed to be using inflate. And I just like to make a nice little rounded area where it's actually melting. Pretty much like that. I'll use smooth and just make sure that what we just made is nice and smooth. I think that looks pretty good. And you can add more or less of that as you like. think I want to smooth this out a little bit more. I don't want it to be too, yeah, I want it to be a little bit more like that. I think that looks a little bit more realistic. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So that's pretty much our, I want to change this so it's not so yellow. It's a little too yellow. It's also the lighting too, so I want to make sure that it stands out from the yellow background. I think that looks better. So that's pretty much our popsicle. And you can see that I already have some lighting here. So firstly, I usually, when I do my lighting, what I do is I turn everything off and then I add the lights one by one. So you see I have this dramatic light here. So that's coming from this side, fairly bright. And then I have another light. Let's see, where's this light? So this is a directional light and it's just pointing down, and here are the options for this light. Not too intense, but just to sort of light up the scene. So we have two lights, one here, an overall light pointing down this way, and we have another light here that's facing from the back, so it's lighting up here. So that gives us, let's see, so that gives us this nice yellow pop. And the reason I have it yellow is because it matches the background. And then I also have the environment. So the environment's very, very bright right now. So let's turn on post-process. And I think it looks really good. I think I like it. We can go ahead and change it from orthographic to perspective. And I have my perspective at a lot. It's actually 38.5, but I think that works for this design. And my environment is at 2.09. So this is the difference without the environment and with the environment. Just kind of lightens it up a lot. You know, and I actually can't see the depressions that much, surprisingly. Usually you can see the depressions a little bit more, but I can't really see them. Oh, you can see them more in the back. Okay. And let's see if I might be able to bring these back with, sometimes you can adjust the ambient occlusion. Sometimes it makes a difference. Doesn't look like it's making much difference now. But I think it looks good. I'm happy with it. Let's see what happens if this is opaque instead of, no, you can't really see much difference. And also, the one thing I'm missing, I think the reason why I had this light so bright is you want to be able to see through the popsicle. So let's just try to make this light a little bit brighter. I think it is this light, the light coming from here. So let's make that brighter. So we'll make that a little brighter. Maybe I'll make this a little bit less. But I still can't see through it. So let's change the popsicle. Let's change the depth. There we go. So I'll raise the depth up a little bit so you can see through it. I think that looks a lot better. something like this. Since I changed that, I can probably lower this a little bit. It doesn't have to be too crazy bright. Something like that. All right. Well, hopefully that was helpful. I've always wanted to make a popsicle sort of like melting like this. But yeah, you should experiment. There's lots of different things you can do. Experiment with using subsurface or opaque. They give very different looks, but all interesting and all fun to do in Nomad. Oh, let's make this subsurface as well. We want to be able to see through that as well. Maybe not through the whole thing, just maybe through the edge. So I'll tone it down so you can just see through the edge. So it really looks like that light is bright on this side. All right, keep drawing, keep sculpting. I'll see you all in the next video. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you want to learn more, check out my classes on Skillshare. I have 2D classes and 3D classes. If you want to see more, be sure to check me out on social media, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all drug-free Dave, and also Facebook. There's some really great Facebook resources for Nomad Sculpt and Procreate, including my own group, Procreate Tutorials and Guidance. As always, keep drawing, keep sculpting, and I'll see you all in the next video.